Hello, I'm Dragon Blitz, and this is going to be a video submission for a marathon run of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This is the Pacifist speedrun specifically, and this run starts off pretty similar to many other runs of the game, where you start playing in the prologue. You play as Richter, and the actions that you take here in the prologue do end up mattering for the overall speedrun. For example, during this section, I'm going to be using the Hydrostorm item crash ability to try and kill Dracula quickly here, and then I'm trying to end with 0 hearts in the top left-hand corner of the screen that shows how many hearts I have. If I end with 0, I do start the game with a heart refresh. That's an item that allows Alucard to refill his hearts to full, as well as it does freeze the screen, which allows for some glitches that we're going to be doing in this run as well. So it's important to note the definition of what is considered pacifist in this game. So pacifist specifically refers to the in-game kill count. So every time you open the menu, the game will show a screen, and in the bottom right-hand corner of that stat screen, it tells you how many kills you have done throughout the entirety of your playthrough. And the goal of this run is to end with 0 kills total. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. Most importantly is going to be just avoiding enemies. So a lot of the run is purposefully damage boosting or jumping around or just flat out avoiding enemies using spells or different items. But another part of that is also going to be glitching that kill count specifically such that we can have enemies die or bosses die, but the actual kill count and the experience amount that they would normally give does not happen. That's a glitch called a revenge tech. I don't know why it's called revenge tech. It just is. It's one of those glitches that was discovered a long, long time ago and was given a silly name, and we respect that history up to this day. So yeah. Moving on, I do grab this turkey from this breakable wall here, and this is a cutscene with death. This cutscene isn't really watched very often in Symphony of the Night speedruns because there are many different ways you can skip this cutscene. But in this category specifically, there's not really a good reason to do so because all it does is allows you to keep your very powerful starting gear, which in most other speedruns, you want to use that starting gear to kill enemies faster. But since we're avoiding killing all enemies, there's not really a good reason to keep the starting gear. It also would require that we use our heart refresh that we have in our inventory, but we need it for later. But right here we do grab the first relic of the run. This is Cube of Zoe. This allows hearts, money, and sub-weapons to materialize from candles after killing them, after breaking open those candles. And that's very, very important for this run in general. Here we're just doing more manipulations here. That red skeleton, by the way, is an enemy that cannot die. If you are to knock it down, it just respawns again. That's one of the reasons why we actually punch it to get it out of our way. Here we grab the leather shield. The leather shield allows us to do one of the primary movement techniques of the game, which is shield dashing. So what I'm doing here is I'm backdashing to just have faster ground speed as opposed to walking, and then I'm canceling that backdash with a shield, and then I'm backdashing again to maintain the high startup backdash speed as much as I possibly can. Backdash canceling ends up being about a little over twice as fast as normal walking speed, so I'm going to be doing that as much as I possibly can. Coming up here is the first boss fight of the run, and you might be thinking this is a pacifist run. Obviously, you can't kill these bosses, right? Well, actually, like I alluded to earlier, there are glitches that allow us to manipulate the kill count such that the bosses will die here, but we don't actually count them as a kill. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lower the HP of Slogger here or Gaibon to the perfect amount, and then I'm gonna use this Hellfire spell such that both hitboxes of the spell are happening at the same time as Alucard's hitbox being inside of the boss's hitbox, and all of those things combining essentially confuse the game. It's a terrible explanation, but it's the best way to describe it because nobody really understands why it happens. But essentially, it just causes the game to not give you the experience and not count that kill, even though those enemies do, in fact, die. There's a couple of revenge techs that are used throughout the run, but each one is kind of different in the way that they are utilized. The common way that they're used is to have multiple hitboxes hitting an enemy while Alucard's hitbox is also inside of that enemy. That's one way to do it, but there's another one coming up that's very unique to a specific boss fight. Another thing that's important to note is that the amount of damage boosting that we're doing throughout this run is going to lower Alucard's health, so we're going to be using different food items or potions to try and keep Alucard's health up for the time being until later on in the run, where we'll have access to essentially infinite resources, but that won't be until a little bit later. I guess right now like the general idea of this run is we're trying to get to the outer wall, and along the way there are enemies blocking our path, and their randomness makes it a little bit more annoying. We go through this clock room here. This is a very important room. In the top left-hand corner, there's a statue that moves in and out of your way depending on the in-game timer. That does matter for this run. We essentially want to come back to this room later on the correct clock cycle, just so that we don't have to sit there and wait. But in the meantime, we're just using more spells, more creative damage boosts to get past enemies efficiently. Also trying to avoid taking too much damage throughout this section, because we don't have infinite healing items or anything like that. So if you take too much damage too early on, it could be really, really bad. There, I pick up the stopwatch sub-weapon. It's pretty much required for this run. It will allow for one of those revenge techs that I talked about earlier. And it also freezes certain enemies on the screen such that they are no longer problems. So it's going to be very useful for getting past certain enemies instead of killing them, just freezing them in place and then finding other ways around them. But yeah, this is pretty much like the only... Well, there's a couple of places for downtime. This is one of those where there's not really much to talk about. It's explaining like stuff that's already been seen before. I guess I could talk about spell invincibility here. Using the Summon Spirit gives you some amount of invincibility, which allows you to move through enemies. And those enemies don't die in a single hit from the spell, so you can use that to get past them. But yeah, this is a great time that would be normally reserved for, like, you know, answering questions on the couch, donations, whatever have you, right before the next section here, because there's a boss fight coming up in the next room after this. So this is the doppelganger boss fight. The way that this boss fight works is that in a normal speedrun, you use the stopwatch, it freezes him in place, and then you can just like wail on him until he's dead. But here we intentionally take damage from the doppelganger, and for whatever reason, if you have contact with doppelganger's body while he is frozen with the stopwatch and kill him before the stopwatch ends, that activates the revenge tech. That's the only instance of a revenge tech working that way in the entire game that I'm aware of. So it works, which is nice for us. Here is where the stopwatch can be very useful. I unfortunately got a little bit screwed here by the placement of that barrel being in the way, so I don't get the full value of that stopwatch activation. And now my HP is very low. Here I also get a very unfortunate like glitch where if you open the menu after throwing a food item out, it despawns the food item and you don't get the healing. So I have to use my potion here. Very unfortunate circumstances, but ultimately we make it through just fine. And the whole reason that we're on this side of the castle in the first place is because the relic that's out here, the form of wolf, the soul of wolf transformation, is very, very important for pretty much every speedrun in the game, and this speedrun is no different. The wolf gives you extra movement options. It allows you to run up slopes and then jump up them for a boost in your vertical speed. It allows you to reach places you're not supposed to. It also gives you access to a dive kick, which is something that the developers gave the player anytime you untransform. It gives you access to a dive kick, which you wouldn't normally be able to do outside of double jumping. Here we use that slope jump mechanic I talked about earlier to grab the garnet item. That's an item that allows you to sell it in the shop, but we're going to be using it for a glitch coming up in a little bit to essentially underflow the amount of garnets that we can sell in the shop. It's known as shop glitch, and that's how we get basically our infinite resources. Now we're on the way to the shop, which is in the long library here. And now that we have access to the Soul of Wolf as well, we can use the wolf for some additional movement options. That's one of the things that I do appreciate about the speedrun. It's a very like technical speedrun where we're avoiding enemies intentionally, but we still also get to utilize all of the really cool speedrun tech that this game is known for, like shield dashing, manipulation via the transformations here. Here I try to get a little bit cheeky and get like an early cycle on this dive kick here. There's a different setup that's more consistent, but it loses time because you have to go all the way back here and then run back up this slope. And the reason we're doing this is because the fairy relic is on the other side. So here we dive kick off the book. It doesn't end up killing the book, and then we land up on this ledge here. Very precise jump. And all this is to grab the fairy card relic. This allows us to spawn the fairy familiar. And this is important because when you spawn in the fairy familiar, she has some dialogue, essentially saying like, hey, thank you for, summoning me or whatever. And that dialogue is going to overlap with a cutscene that happens when you enter the librarian's shop for the first time. So I wait for the fairy to start talking, and then it overlaps with the cutscene. And now I can open the equipment menu when I'm not normally supposed to be able to. So I set up to sell that garnet, but right before I sell it, I equip it in my menu. So that way it is gone from my available sellable inventory. This underflows the amount of garnets in my inventory from 0 to 255. And now I can sell a bunch of them. And fun fact, we can actually sell so many that we actually hit the money cap of 9999999. So I'm going to actually have to hit the money cap multiple times because we have to buy a lot of stuff here. We're buying a bunch of invincibility potions, specifically antivenoms, which normally cure your poison, but also anytime you use them, you're invincible for a short period of time, which is really important. We're buying a bunch of flame stars because they're very powerful single-use throwable items that are going to be used for farming a specific enemy later on. It's a very technical farm, but that will be explained a little bit later. Here I have to do a double shop glitch, fun fact. So I have to underflow all of my garnets again. I sold all 255 of them, and then I have to set up the shop glitch again to get another underflowed 255 amount of garnets. Just goes to show how much we're actually buying here. We buy a few other items as well. We buy the fire boomerangs, which are going to be used for a glitch later. We buy the Jewel of Open relic, which allows us to open blue doors. We buy mana prisms, which lets us refill our mana whenever we want. We buy Buffalo Stars, which are another powerful throwing item that are going to be used basically just for the final boss. We buy a meal ticket, which is used for spawning a random food item, and it can also be used for backdash canceling, similar to how the shield works. And we're looking for a very specific food item as we start doing this food dashing technique here. We're looking for the toadstool item. The reason we're able to throw as many of these as we want is because we also bought the duplicator, which gives us infinite use of single-use throwing items like a meal ticket. But we still needed to buy a bunch of other single-use items for a specific setup that's going to be happening later on. So we both need the duplicator, but we also need a high amount of throwables and potions and stuff like that. We also bought an elixir, which, much like all other types of potions, gives us a brief period of invincibility, but also heals us to full HP, which is going to be very useful because we're going to be doing, again, a lot more damage boosting. And we're actually going to be doing a specific type of damage boost because of the toadstool item that we're looking for. So there were a couple of toadstools that were thrown out, but they were in inconvenient spots to go and pick up. So what I have to do, this is kind of my last chance to look for a toadstool, is I come up here to essentially throw a bunch of items until I see the toadstool and then pick it up. I found one there. My inventory is now kind of full of junk items that I don't really want, which is unfortunate, but there is a sort item function that exists in the menu, so I'm going to sort my items in a second here. And then I finally find the toadstool. It's one of the reasons why you want to just find the toadstool on its own and not pick up any extra items. So there, I disable the fairy because the fairy does try to heal my poison here. So I'm using the toadstool to poison myself, and I want the fairy to not heal my poison right away. Because being poisoned lowers all of your stats by like half or something like that. So now I'm going to be essentially taking double damage. And we use this to do a big toss, which is essentially anytime you take more than half of your health in a single hit, you get sent flying across the room until you either hit a wall or hit a ceiling. And that's very useful for traversing large areas like this. This is the heart refresh animation that I talked about earlier. It freezes the screen, which is very useful for some glitches coming up, but it's also useful for refilling our hearts. It's intended use here. Now I have all of my hearts back, and I can utilize the stopwatch in specific spots here. And I have to be very careful because I am still poisoned, and all of these enemies will either one or two shot me, depending on how I get hit. So I need to avoid taking damage here. And one of the best ways to do that is to just freeze all of these enemies on the screen and then utilize the elixir for invincibility frames while I platform up these cogs. Again, another stopwatch to get these enemies out of my way, and then utilizing the invincibility frames from the potion. Here we utilize invincibility frames and then intentionally get hit by the tip of the sword to get sent flying across to the next guy. And then we utilize more wolf movement to slope jump up here, jump across this gap, and now we're going to be making our way towards the next boss fight, which is Karasamon. But actually, we don't have the means to revenge tech Karasamon, so we can't use that glitch to get past him without gaining experience. So instead, we're going to use the heart refresh to go for a different glitch, which is called a reverse shift line. It's a very fancy name, but essentially what it allows us to do is it allows us to skip a screen by underflowing the stored X position of Alucard when walking through that screen. And this particular reverse shift line is very, very precise. I believe this one ends up being sub-pixel perfect. There might be other setups that would make it less precise, but this is a very niche glitch. Like, this is very much only used in this category alone, so I don't think there's been a lot of research done. But here we transform into Wolf so that we can run past this screen transition, and then it warps us past the boss fight with Karasamon. The reason we have to do it in a precise way is because there's like a red door, and red doors interact with Alucard in a weird way where there's like a control is taken away from Alucard and it forces you through that red door. So if I were to do the glitch not in Wolf form, it would just put me back in the Karasamon boss room, but on the other side of the room. So, but yeah, now that we've skipped Karasamon, we grab the warp room that's down here in the Castle Keep. All you have to do to activate warp rooms is to just discover them, walk into the room, and then you can leave, and then you can use them again whenever you want. Here we're trying to use some wolf movement to get past this section, as well as using the stopwatch to get these flying flea riders out of our way. And this wolf movement is so that way we can go over here and grab the Leapstone Relic. This gives us access to a double jump and a dive kick whenever we want now, so we don't have to transform and untransform if we want a dive kick. Leapstone is very useful for just general traversing sections of the game. Double jumps are usually important in, Metroidvanias. And then we use the library card to warp back to the library immediately. This gets us out of that area and closer to our next goal, which is going to be the caverns. The caverns has a lot of useful items and some interesting stuff that we're going to be doing down there. A lot of very unique movement that only really exists in a category like this. This category has a lot of unique glitches in general. But yeah, still, we're just trying to avoid the enemies the best we can, trying to hope for good RNG on some of these enemy patterns as well. So yeah, this is all movement that is like backtracking towards the caverns, which is near the center of the marble gallery here. So this would be another good time for, answering questions, couch banter, talking about whatever, donations, etc., etc. Because we're essentially just using the same mechanics that we've been doing: shield dashing, invincibility from potions. You know the drill. Now we're opening this blue door. The only reason we're able to do that and press this switch is because we bought the Jewel of Open relic from earlier, which is very, very important. This switch opens up a section to the caverns, which is right here. That little like pink section opens up and allows you to enter the caverns from the top. And we're going to be entering the underground caverns and then grabbing a few things almost immediately and then leaving, which I'll explain in a little bit. But first, we're doing a bit of advanced tech here, which is called a double jump reset. Essentially, if you double jump, transform into Wolf, and then untransform whilst touching the ceiling, it gives you your double jump back. So you're able to kind of crawl along ceilings this way. It's a very it's not super precise, but it's a precise enough trick that it can be scary, because if I fail the double jump reset, I just fall all the way down that shaft and I lose a ton of time having to climb back up. But the reason we do all this is so we can grab the Claymore item that you just saw me pick up, and then I use this spell here because it's faster than opening my menu and equipping like a sword to break open that pot so I can grab the Moonstone. The Moonstone is useful just because it increases all my stats +5, and the stats in this game actually do matter quite a bit, especially the luck stat, because we are going to require a high luck stat for a chance at a random drop, which I'll explain in a little bit once it comes up. But first, we're going to be equipping the Claymore here. This gives us access to a thrust attack, which also halts Alucard's fall speed. So what we can do is we can transform into Wolf, untransform, which gives us a tiny bit of height, and then stall our height by using the thrust attack of the Claymore. This does cost mana, which is that blue or purple bar at the top of the screen. And then we have to refill our mana with those mana prisms every once in a while. So it's a pretty technical set of inputs. There I fail my jump, and just showcasing more Wolf Rising, you know what I mean? Want to make sure you guys really get the point of what Wolf Rising looks like. It's a super important movement technique for this category in particular, because it's our primary way of gaining height for the next little bit here. But yeah, Now that we have access to Wolf Rising, we can essentially, very slowly, but we can fly, and we can go to all sorts of different places because of that. And we're immediately going to be taking advantage of that to go back to the center clock room, that clock area that I was talking about from like, I don't know, 15 minutes ago. And above that clock room is a room that has the Gravity Boots relic. The Gravity Boots relic essentially allows you to do a high jump, a very, 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 very tall jump. And you can chain those jumps over and over again if you have access to like double jumps or whatever. There's a couple different ways that you can chain them, but essentially we would have access to chaining them. But it requires that you have some sort of flight. The game intends that you use the Soul of Bat to fly up here to grab this relic. It's essentially like a bonus relic. It's not required for beating the game, but it is a nice thing to have. But for this run, it's going to be our primary way of gaining height quickly once we grab it. Because this is very, very slow, but it is necessary for the time being. So we're going to be Wolf Rising a lot. Anytime our mana gets too low, we have to open the menu, Mana Prism, transform into Wolf, cancel, put the Claymore back on, because the Claymore does require 2 hand slots, so we can't like equip the Mana Prism and the Claymore at the same time. So it requires us to do this menu thing, which makes it even slower. But we do get to take advantage of a very specific glitch here in a second once I land on this platform coming up, called Fire Boomerang jumps. So what ends up happening is Fire Boomerangs take up all of the available like sprite animation slots, so you can glitch the game by throwing 6 Fire Boomerangs on the screen, jumping, and then transforming. And then while the Fire Boomerangs are on screen, the game can't handle the transformation animation, so it essentially queues it, waiting for the Fire Boomerangs to go off screen. But in the meantime, if you jump right before you transform, it maintains your jump speed the entire time while it's queuing that transformation. It's a very niche movement option because it does not work if you move through a screen transition. So, for example, to like gain height up the shaft in the first place, we can't use it because there's a screen transition there. So it only works in like the middle of a room, basically. And in this run, that's like the only place it's actually useful for. But it saves a ton of time having to Wolf Rise up that part of the shaft. And now that we have Gravity Boots, we can fly basically whenever we want, which is very important because almost immediately we're going to be using it here in this section of the Aurochs' quarters. So thankfully, the statue that I was talking about before wasn't in our way. If the statue was in our way, then we would have to like wait an extra minute, basically, for the statue to move out of our way. So this is a very good cycle. So yeah, this is what the gravity jumps look like. You can chain them over and over and over again to fly. And we use it to grab this pot right up here, which has a luck potion inside of it. And as I talked about earlier, stats are very, very important in this run, specifically luck. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maximize the amount of luck that I have in this run, so that way I have the highest likelihood of getting a specific drop later on. This turns a drop chance of, I think it was like, before these luck optimizations, the drop chance was like 0.4%. It changes them to be about a 2.2% chance that I get the drop, which is, you know, much, much, much better. Because technically you can skip some of this stuff, like specifically the luck potion you can technically skip, but the additional boost that you get in luck ends up saving you time overall. And of course, relying on a random drop in a marathon run can be very, very risky. But of course, there are, you know, safety saves that are set up where you can just save after grabbing the drop and then like utilize that if the farm itself is taking too long or if we're at risk of going over estimate. Fun fact, a history about this category is technically the Pacifist run was shown off at... The only marathon run I'm aware of was SGDQ 2014, I believe, by Scout, and his estimate was 13 hours to account for the random drop. This is before optimizing a lot of the luck stat, so he was relying on essentially the 0.4% chance drop or whatever it was, which makes the average farm way, way, way longer. I believe his first completed run took 13 hours, hence why the estimate was 13 hours. Speedrunning community was it sure was a thing back then. 10 years ago. Wow. Over 10 years ago at this point. But yeah, here I'm opening this switch. I'm pressing this switch so that way the Donkey Kong skeleton gets spawned here in the caverns, because it is going to be required that that barrel blows up this bridge here, which will unlock the path towards the mines. So here I have to lure the skeleton over so he can throw his barrel in the correct spot, but I have to also double jump reset against the ceiling here so that I can avoid these frogs jumping on me. And there we go. I also grabbed this heart max up because part of the glitch that will give us the drop that we need requires that we use our hearts with sub-weapons. So basically just having access to more sub-weapons before refilling our hearts is going to be very, very important. Here I'm saving the game because we're going to be doing a very complicated glitch that has a chance of failing, and the save is just there for safety. Even in the world record run, like at this point, you don't want to lose a run due to failing this trick. Here I'm using map buffering to essentially like confirm my position for this out of bounds clip. Here, while out of bounds, I use the Claymore thrust attack, which gives me faster aerial speed and access to a dive kick. So we're going to use this out of bounds dive kick to frame perfectly dive kick for one frame and then use the heart refresh on the next frame. And if I do it correctly, it allows me to leave the room here, skipping this boss fight with Cerberus. There's no known way to revenge tech Cerberus, so this is basically the only way to skip past him in this for the speedrun. And yeah, it's like pixel perfect and frame perfect in this very awkward way, but we do have map buffering to make it more possible. Without map buffering, this trick is very, very difficult, in my opinion. But shout out to Rom Scout, doing all of this crazy stuff 10 years ago before map buffering was really known to be a thing. And there we go. You have to transform and untransform to manipulate your hitbox to allow you to squeeze through this out of bounds geometry that's like really weird. And the reason we do all of this is because the enemy that we need to farm is in this next section, but we're not quite ready to farm yet because we can't open up that section unless we get help from another familiar. This time it's going to be the demon card, which summons the demon familiar. The demon familiar does attack enemies, so it's an offensive familiar, so we can't like leave it out and have it kill enemies because it would still count as a kill for us, and it would also increase our experience and stuff like that. So it would invalidate the run if the demon happens to kill an enemy. But the demon is used for its intended purpose, which is opening switches, pressing switches that Alucard can't reach. There's only two in the game, one in the mines here and one in the reverse mines in the second castle. So that switch in the top right-hand corner, we're going to summon the demon familiar. We're going to reset the room so that way all the aggro from all the enemies is gone. And then the demon's going to press the switch. We have our area set up such that we have the warp for this area so we can warp back later. But we're not ready to start farming the enemy that's on the other side of that wall that's opening up. So I'm going to library card during the wall opening animation. Saves a little bit of time. And then we are going to finish our setup here. So we need a specific sub-weapon, the Holy Water. And we also are going to be visiting the librarian again, but instead of talking to him through his shop menu, we're actually going to be visiting the underside of the librarian for an Easter egg. It's another reason why we grabbed the gravity boots specifically, because underneath the librarian, you can gravity jump up a shaft that pushes him up, and he'll drop items as you do it. And these items are meant to be little Easter eggs. You get a life max up from him. You can get Dracula tunic from him. You can get the axe armor from him. But what's most important for us is we're trying to get the Ring of Arcana, which is an equipable item that increases the rare drop chance from enemies. So this is another way to increase the odds of getting that rare drop that we talked about earlier. This takes a couple of tries because I believe it's a random chance every time you gravity jump into him, whether he gives you an item. And then the items he gives you is in a cycle. So the first gravity jump will always give you the heart max, or sorry, the life max up. And then from here, it's just a random chance, and then he'll give you the Arcana. After this, he would give the axe armor, and then after that, he would give the Dracula tunic, but it requires that you also visit the second castle before that flag has been set. So now that we have the Ring of Arcana, we're just going to be trying to leave this area, again, avoiding killing all the enemies. The invincibility from the potion is super duper useful to allow us to both pass enemies and then refill our health if we do damage boost off of them. And now we are going back to the area that we just came from. Almost, actually. We do have to make one more stop at the castle entrance. So fun fact about this game, the warp system is based off of the locations that you have visited. So you can always warp to a warp room that you have discovered, except for the one in the castle entrance. That warp is always available to the player so long as they enter any warp room. So that's this area right here. You can determine which area you're in by the animal in the background of these warp rooms. Yeah, this warp room is normally blocked off by this switch, but we're warping to the castle entrance because we're going to be grabbing a sub-weapon here, the Holy Water, like I said earlier. There is another Holy Water location that is slightly more optimal to grab, so that is a little bit of room for improvement on this route that wasn't used for this run. But there's the Holy Water. The Holy Water is going to be helping us because, like I said earlier, the Revenge Tech glitch requires multiple hitboxes hitting an enemy at the same time, while Alucard is inside of that enemy's hitbox. So here we're saving the game because there is it's not a random chance, but you can kind of get unlucky based off of the way that the hitboxes are colliding with the enemy to essentially not let you do the Revenge Tech glitch, and then you'll gain the experience and you'll immediately level up, and that's how you'll know that you actually killed the enemy as opposed to doing the Revenge Tech. This is probably the most controversial part of the run, not to mention that we've already, defeated enemies before and have those kills essentially just not count for the run. So people do get a little bit, I guess, concerned that the category is called Pacifist, yet you do see enemies die on screen. And who knows? Maybe Alucard is responsible. Who's to say? As far as I know, the in-game menu says 0 kills so far. If you pay very close attention, it's somewhere around here. When you open the menu, it'll have the kill count, and it should be at 0. Here I use the luck potion to increase my luck. I am using the anti-venoms to be invincible so I can walk inside of these enemies to throw the flame stars. And I'm also using the holy water to have extra hitboxes hitting the enemy all at the same time. We do this over and over again, hoping for the heart refresh drop, which is a pretty rare drop. It's about a 2.2% chance that it happens. We got it on our 4th try here, which is like incredible. This is one of the reasons why this run happened to be the world record. It saved like 2 minutes getting it this early. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So, the reason we needed that heart refresh, by the way, you might be thinking, you already have a heart refresh, why would you need 2? Well, it's because Alucard has 2 separate hands that can hold different use items. So if I have the heart refresh in one hand, and I only have one in my inventory, I can't then equip it to my other hand. But now that I have 2, I can use 1 in each hand. And that opens up for a very specific type of glitch that requires that you use heart refreshes back to back over and over and over again. So what you have to do is you have to press the heart refresh like left hand button, and then you can hold the right hand button to buffer the second heart refresh. But that then opens up the ability to heart refresh with the other hand. So then you hold the left hand button and then the right hand button. You do that over and over and over again to essentially buffer heart refreshes indefinitely for as long as you need to. And that's very important because heart refreshes freeze the screen. So here I despawn that enemy, and now I'm looking for, I believe it's a 4 pixel wide window, and I need to frame perfectly stop my dive kick on the first possible frame to maintain my horizontal momentum from the dive kick as soon as I land on the floor. And now I'm going to be utilizing the heart refresh glitch here. This is also known as a screen grab glitch, but essentially what I'm doing here is the camera is going to be staying stationary. Meanwhile, Alucard's position is going to continue to slide across the screen as I'm using these heart refreshes. I believe in this instance, I use 22 heart refreshes. You can use 21 or 22 depending on your positioning and speed, but I think on average it's 22. And what's going to happen here is the positioning of the camera and the positioning of Alucard is going to desync so much that as soon as I stop using these heart refreshes, the camera is going to snap to Alucard's position within 1 frame. And by doing so, it essentially disables the collision that's underneath Alucard at the given moment for a frame, and that allows us to fall through the floor. And that's going to be used because right underneath us is a room where the Soul of Bat is currently being guarded by a boss, the Lesser Demon specifically. And the Lesser Demon boss fight is, there's no way to utilize the Revenge Tech glitch to get past him. Each enemy kind of has different requirements for the Revenge Tech, and as of right now, there's no way to Revenge Tech Lesser Demon. So this is essentially the only way that we have access to in this run to skip Lesser Demon and get the Soul of Bat. relic. And the Soul of Bat relic is required for a very specific glitch later on as well. But yeah, we still have a couple more of these heart refresh glitches. It is a slow trick. And it does require a lot of focus on my end to perform. So it's one of those tricks that's great for people to just like read donations through while I just count in my head and pay attention to Alucard's positioning. And there it is. I released the heart refresh animation, allowing me to clip through the floor the entire time. I'm holding left and holding jump to slow how fast I fall through the floor. And then that gets me right on top of the Soul of Bat. And then I use the library card to immediately warp out because I'd be trapped there otherwise. And now I can utilize the Soul of Bat to fly very, very quickly here in a spell that's called a Wing Smash. So what I'm doing is I'm holding the jump button and then doing a 3/4 circle motion on the control stick and then releasing the jump button. This gives me an invincible tackle that does do damage across the screen, and I can chain that spell over and over again to fly so long as I have mana. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, I'm like chunking bits of my mana down every time I Wing Smash. And we are level 1 because we've never killed an enemy and we've never gained any experience. So our total number of mana points is 30, and each Wing Smash costs 8 MP, so we have access to 3 Wing Smashes per full MP bar, and the way that we refill our MP bar is by using Mana Prisms over and over again. So it's going to be a constant cycle of using Wing Smashes when we can, untransforming to refill our MP, because you can't use the Mana Prism in bat form, and then doing that over and over again. We also have to be careful because the Wing Smash can kill enemies, so I have to avoid enemies whilst also traveling across the screen. Here I do a very specific wolf jump to activate a glitch called Richter Skip. Essentially, I entered the room in a way that the game never detected Alucard's presence, and it loads the default state of that room by basically skipping past a trigger with that specific wolf jump. That trigger basically tells the game, hey, if Alucard is in this room, load the Richter boss fight. And because we skipped that trigger, we get to skip that Richter boss fight and go straight to the second castle. This skips needing the holy glasses and a bunch of other items that require like a ton of time to collect. Here we're utilizing basically all the movement options in the game, which is really, really dope. Here I know the Wing Smash won't kill these enemies, so I'm allowed to Wing Smash through them. But one thing that is important to note is that if you do multiple Wing Smashes, you actually stack multiple versions of that Wing Smash hitbox on top of yourself. So you can end up doing double damage with the Wing Smash if you do those infinite Wing Smash chains and end up killing enemies that you wouldn't normally otherwise. So in that room, I opt to just do single Wing Smashes, wait for the Wing Smash to end, which forcibly untransforms me, and then do another Wing Smash afterwards. Here is another boss fight. This is the Medusa boss fight, and the way that we're going to skip past this one is we're not going to be doing a revenge tech like we have with other instances of skipping enemies. Instead, we're going to poison ourselves again because we need our stats to be low enough to get big tossed. This is a glitch referred to as a half-blood tech. Again, another one of those really old glitches that was named a long time ago. Essentially, you get pushed out of bounds if you are in bat form and get in a corner of a room and get big tossed. So the toadstool allows us to get big tossed by taking more than half of our health in a single hit. And then being in bat form like pushes us out of bounds as we're doing that. And then we use potions to refill our HP before we actually end up dying from being pushed out of bounds. It's a very precise trick, but it's really, really cool to see. And now that we are past Medusa, there's not much stopping us from the end of the game. So we're going to utilize the gravity jumps, the transformation, momentum preservation that we have. Every time we transform into bat, we maintain our horizontal transformation speed, which is why I'm doing backdashes into transforming, as well as doing dive kick cancels into transforming. You could also do gravity jumps diagonally and then transform there to maintain momentum. Here I have to be pretty careful because this is probably the most tricky spot to Wing Smash through, because these enemies right here can jump at you, and if they jump at you in the specific spot, you'll Wing Smash into them and kill them. And the run is over. It is no longer a pacifist run. So still up to this point, the run can end. And it's one of the reasons why I actually opt to transform into Wolf here, because this is a very consistent way to force the enemies to jump over you and avoid them without accidentally killing them. And it's relatively fast. And now we are pretty much at the end of the game. There's not much risk of like accidentally killing an enemy. We are still at risk of dying, because we are still level 1 in this scenario this late into the game. I'm pretty sure most of these enemies will either one-shot us or big toss us into a situation that might kill us. So we have to be pretty precise with our wing smashing and our positioning here. It's one of the reasons I use the mana prism here, so I have a full bar of mana to get through this area. Refill our mana again to try and avoid these enemies. And now I'm setting up for another glitch. So the end of the game is in that center clock room that we just passed. But we can move to that area from out of bounds by doing that shift line, the reverse shift line glitch, the same glitch that we used to skip past Karasamon. We're using it to skip past this save room that's to our left. And it's going to push us out of bounds on top of the next room over. And now we can move out of bounds in the ceiling. You can see Alucard's wings are kind of flapping in bat form. So I'm moving to a particular spot on the screen very, very slowly because out of bounds physics like changes your movement speed for whatever reason. So I'm picking a very specific spot, and then I'm going to wing smash from that spot, which is going to push me through this room. There's going to be a little bit of a screen flash. And then from here, now we are on top of the room that was blocking us from the end of the game. The only thing that is stopping us now is the Shaft boss fight and then the Dracula boss fight. We can't kill Shaft because Shaft does count as a kill. So we have to find a way to skip past him. And the way we're going to do that is by yet again doing another screen grab glitch. So I'm setting up my position very precisely as well as my dive kick speed to slide across the ground and then start heart refreshing. So again, this one takes, I believe, 18 total heart refreshes to push us out of bounds. And once we are out of bounds with this trick, we can then fly up the side of the room. And on the left side of this room, out of bounds, is the load trigger that loads the final boss fight with Dracula. So by doing this glitch, this is pretty much our only way to skip past Shaft. There is a different way to skip past Shaft, but it requires playing on the Japanese 1.0 PlayStation release of the game, which is the release that was used back in 2014 for the SGDQ showcase. And this glitch was discovered after that point. So the route is quite a bit faster because, one, we're playing on the Xbox version of the game, which loads the game so much faster. Every load zone is way, way, way faster. So just in load times alone, it saves probably like 10 minutes. And the route has been optimized quite a bit where the luck factor is not nearly as bad because we're increasing our luck stat by a lot here. And in a marathon situation, I would just have a safety save anyways if the farming was not going well due to RNG. But also this skip here being discovered means that the Xbox version was a viable version for this route, which again, like I said, saves like 10 minutes in load time. And there we are out of bounds. We're just going to fly up to the left. And then this load zone is to our left right here. And now we are fighting Dracula. This is it. Within the definition of Pacifist, we do defeat Dracula to end the game and get the end credits. So time ends as soon as Dracula is defeated. And the way that we do that is by equipping 2 Buffalo Stars. We bought those during the shop glitch section. They do more damage than Flame Stars because Dracula resists fire attacks. But yeah, we just throw Buffalo Stars over and over and over again, doing like 90 damage per hit versus him. And we spam those over and over again until he runs out of HP, and that is time. Finishing the Pacifist run in 42 minutes and 37 seconds. This is by no means a perfect run, but this category is pretty brutal. There's a lot of very technical tricks, a lot of frame perfect, pixel perfect shenanigans that you have to be very well practiced in. But that's Symphony of the Night at this point. We have map buffering to make those more consistent. Safety saves are a big part of marathon runs for this game nowadays as well, just to ensure that some of the very, very silly stuff doesn't go very poorly in a marathon run setting. But yeah, I think this category is very, very cool. It gets to showcase a very different angle of playing this game that hasn't been shown off in over 10 years now, and a lot of the route has changed so drastically since 2014 when it was last shown off. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.